We are in the year 711. Iberia is ruled by the Visigoths. The kingdom was severely marked by the instability caused by a power struggle. Even though on the map, the realm appeared as a big, powerful structure ruling over a large territory which was a part of the Roman Empire some centuries ago, internally, the Visigoth kingdom had some problems. According to the later chronicler Ibn Abd al-Hakam, the Tangier governor Tariq ibn Ziyad led a raiding force approximately of 7,000 men from North Africa to southern Spain in 711. After a short series of victories, the whole of the Iberian Peninsula was annexed to the Umayyad Caliphate in just a few years. But how did this happen? One of the main reasons was the lack of protection. Even if the reason for this conquest is more detailed, it is clear that the Visigoths, prior to the invasion, starting as a religious movement in the hot deserts of Arabia, Islam spread rapidly, mainly to the military successes against the Byzantines and against the Persians. Arab dynasties expanded more and more, in east in Persia and in west in North Africa. By the end of the 7th century, the Caliphate reached the shores of the Atlantic Ocean. Many local rulers and people embraced the new religion due to its advantages. At its beginning, Christians constituted a majority of the Caliphate's population. They and others were allowed to practice their own religion, but had to pay a tax called the jizya. This was a tax for non-Muslims. Prominent positions were held by Christians, some of whom belonged to families that had served in Byzantine governments. Hence, the Umayyad army started to have other people in its composition, including Berbers. But even with such a large empire, the Umayyad were looking to expand even more. Due to the lack of much evidence, what happened in Iberia in the early 8th century is uncertain. Also, we don't know for sure what led the Muslims into Iberia. Even if the Visigoth kingdom was a well-structured power, at some point, due to arguments between the elite classes who were responsible for the election of the king, the internal power started to crumble. The king, named Witiza, died. It is not known exactly why, but probably he was assassinated by Roderick, who was supported by some members of the elite class. Therefore, Hispania was divided between rival claimants, Roderick in the south and Attila II in the north. This is supported by some evidence that suggests a division of royal authority. A story about an oppressed Christian chief, Julian, that went to the Umayyad governor of North Africa with a plea for help against the tyrannical Visigoths, suggests that this was the reason for the invasion, but this story is not universally accepted. Probably, the reason for this invasion may have more to do with the Muslim drive to enlarge their territory as they had done earlier. Due to their internal struggle, the Visigoth kingdom appeared as the perfect prey. In 711, the Umayyad governor of a North Africa province, Musa bin Nusayr, selected the Berber general Tariq ibn Ziyad to cross the strait from Africa to Europe in order to attack the Visigoth kingdom. With his 7,000 soldiers, he marched unopposed in southern Hispania for some time and even received more troops. With around 12,000 soldiers, the invaders were looking to the north. At this time, Roderick was fighting in the Basque when he was recalled to the south to deal with an invasion. The armies that met in the Battle of Guadalete on that day decided the fates of the Gothic kingdom in Spain, but are not reliably described in the surviving records. The Battle of Guadalete was not an isolated Berber attack, but followed a series of raids across the Straits of Gibraltar from North Africa, which had resulted in the sack of several South Iberian towns. Berber forces had probably been harassing the peninsula by sea since the conquest of Tangiers at the beginning of the 8th century. The Muslim army was predominantly Berber cavalry. Under Berber leadership, the Visigoths were probably not much larger in numbers. Again, due to instability and lack of unity when the battle started, not all of the Visigoths engaged in battle. A cavalry wing that had secretly pledged to rebel against Roderick stood aside, giving the enemy an opening. The Christian army was routed, outflanked, and even if they fought as hard as they could, they lost, and the king was killed in the final hours of battle. It is possible that his enemies intended to abandon Roderick on the field, to be defeated and killed by the Muslims. It is not known for sure how exactly things went, if there was a betrayal or a conspiracy, or a deal that was made between the Muslims and some nobles. Anyhow, the huge division among the elite class, the lack of unity, and a contested king affected the outcome of the battle. This opened the gates for the conquest of Iberia, not because the invading force was more numerous, but because it was more organized around a single idea. Still divided by the ruling class, the Visigothic kingdom couldn't stop the invading force from pillaging and advancing. After the battle, Tariq marches north and captures the important city of Cordova without major resistance. The march continued, and the capital Tolitum fell into Muslim hands. Tariq's journey to central Iberia wasn't opposed. This again shows the weakness of the Christian kingdom. The Visigoths were, unlike Francia to its north, not organized for war. A small number of elite clans, the king and his personal following, and the forces that could be raised from the royal taxpayers constituted the troops of the kingdom. After the first victory, the Muslims conquered most of Spain and Portugal with little difficulty, and in fact, with little opposition. One reason for the rapid Muslim success after the battle was the generous surrender terms that they offered to local people. Many people accepted the new rule, which is believed to be less harsh contrasted with the previous conditions by the previous Visigoth rulers, including Witiza and Roderick. Besides the local people, much of the ruling class, the nobles and the important men from administration, submitted to the Umayyads. The ruling Islamic forces were made up of different nationalities, and many of the forces were converts with uncertain motivation, so the establishment of a coherent Muslim state was not easy. Without having the power to assemble an army to liberate the realm, and driven by their self-interest, some of the elite class considered that opposing the invaders would have been pointless. They accepted the new rule in order to preserve their power. Many of them had important positions, money, and holdings in the kingdom. This wasn't the case of all. There were still little skirmishes, but nothing powerful enough to stop the annexation of Iberia. Also, religious notes credit this event in different manners. The later Arabic historians universally credit their religion for the victory, while the other side blame the Goths' defeat on their lack of penance for their sins. For the next 7 years, all of Iberia fell under the new administration. But not all of Iberia was pacified. In the north, in the Cantabrian Mountains, a new movement will start and will mark the beginning of what will be known as Reconquista, the reconquer of Iberia by Christians. This process would extend over a period of almost 8 centuries, in which new Christian kingdoms would fight against the Muslim rulers, pushing them south until every small pocket of land was reconquered in 1492.
We want to thank you so much for watching this video and to